Welcome back to another Flash video tutorial. I'm going to go ahead and get started by creating a new ActionScript 3.0 document. And this video is going to cover the paint bucket tool, the ink bottle tool, and the eyedropper tool. So I'm going to begin by switching to my brush tool, and I'm going to paint in some fill. Paint. And I'm going to go into my pencil tool. I'll paint in some lines. They look very similar, so maybe I'll go ahead and make some of those dashed. Oh, this is so ugly. Alright, so we have fill and we have some stroke. I'll go into the rectangle tool. I'll add a little bit of both. So, okay, now we're set up. To begin, I'm going to go over the paint bucket tool. The paint bucket tool essentially tries to fill in any gaps in between where you click. So I'll better demonstrate by the paint bucket tool creates fill. So I'm going to go ahead and change my my fill color to red. And I have my paint bucket tool selected. And you see if I click on my square, it turns the inside of my square red. I press Ctrl Z to undo that. Say I click on the stage, nothing really happens. But if I click inside of an area that I've closed off, so you see here with this fill, I have all these shapes. I can actually click inside, and the paint bucket tool will try and fill up all that space in between with whatever color I had selected. So even if I were to select like a gradient, see it would try and create a gradient in each individual section. Now if I try and click on this blue stroke here, it's not going to work because the paint bucket tool only works for fill. But if I clicked on this green fill here, you can see my whole fill has now been replaced with this gradient that I had selected. So let me just better illustrate really quick. I'm going to create a line that goes across the center here, so that way I have a point in the center that I can actually fill. So now if I click in the center here, I lied. Let me make sure this is actually all covered up. There we go. So that actually wasn't touching. So as long as there is a completed shape or outline, whether you've created that with fill or whether or not you've created that with a stroke, you can go ahead and use the paint bucket tool to fill it out. Now here's an interesting thing. If I go ahead, I'll use a stroke to split my fill in half. Or my lines, my fills, whatever you want to call them. The green lines were created with the brush tool, so they're created with fill. Now I'm going to go over to my paint bucket tool again. Now if I go ahead and click on any of these green fills here, you see it only goes halfway, and that's because the stroke divides this fill into two separate parts. So when I click on green, or any of this green fill here, it's going to go ahead and fill up everything that's touching that's the same color. So let's say I made this inside here green, and then I went ahead and made it red. You can see now this whole color changes, but only up until where I've divided my my fill with the stroke. So I can make this, even if I make this the same color as the stroke in the middle, you can see it won't overlap because stroke and fill are two different things. So moving on. I'm going to left click and hold on my paint bucket tool, and then that way I can get to the ink bottle tool. And the ink bottle tool works very similar to the fill tool, except for that it works with strokes. Works very similar to the paint bucket tool, except that it works with strokes instead of fill. So if I were to go ahead and use my ink bottle tool, and I'm going to change this color to, let's say, red for now, and click on my square, you can see the outline of my square has changed. And I can even change the stroke size with this. I can change the style. I can change anything about the stroke using my ink bottle tool. So these lines that I've created here already, I'm going to go ahead and, I don't know, make these black. So this was black and dash. And you can see now it's not covering the whole thing when I click on it. That's very similar to how the fill was divided. You can also divide strokes. So strokes can be divided by strokes, and fill can be divided by strokes. pretty much though, when you're going around clicking, that's how that's going to work. So the last tool is the eyedropper tool, and the eyedropper tool is your best friend for getting strokes and fills that you've already created. So if I were to go ahead and click on this red fill that I've created here, actually let me change the color real quick so you can see. So I'm going to set all my colors to yellow. If I go ahead and go to my eyedropper tool and click on the red fill, you can see now in the bottom left hand corner I have the red fill transferred over there, and now I can go ahead and draw with my brush tool, and now it's red. Same thing if I click on a stroke. So if I click on this dashed line that's black, you can see in the top right I have a stroke of size 2. It's black and it's dashed. So now when I go to my ink bottle tool and I click, it automatically changes. The cool thing about the ink bottle tool that I forgot to mention is that if you go ahead and click on anything that is a fill, it'll try and create an outline for you. So this weird shape that I have generated, I can just click on it with my ink bottle tool and it automatically adds a stroke to the outside. And that's about it for the paint bucket, ink bottle, and eyedropper tool.